The parable of the talents, God's blueprint for wealth multiplication. Jesus talked about money more than almost anything else, more than heaven, more than hell, more than prayer. And yet, many believers still feel guilty for wanting to build wealth. Some feel ashamed for dreaming bigger. Others feel conflicted about profit, growth, or financial success. And many Christian entrepreneurs live with an unspoken tension: can I pursue wealth and still be faithful to God? But what if the Bible doesn't discourage wealth at all? What if Scripture actually teaches responsibility, growth, and multiplication? What if Jesus himself gave us a blueprint, not for poverty, but for faithful increase? Today, we're unpacking the parable of the talents, one of the most misunderstood financial teachings in Scripture, and what it reveals about God's expectations for stewards, entrepreneurs, and builders of wealth. Welcome to the Fransua Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Davidson, and today's episode may challenge what you've been taught about money, faith, and obedience. In Matthew 25, Jesus tells a story a master prepares to leave on a journey. Before he leaves, he calls his servants and entrusts them with resources, talents. One receives 5, another receives 2, another receives 1. The key phrase, each according to his ability. This is not a random distribution. It's intentional, it's strategic, and it's deeply revealing. Let's break down what this parable teaches us step by step. The first truth we must understand is this: the servants did not own the talents, they were entrusted with them. This tells us 3 powerful principles. 1, wealth starts with trust. The master trusted the servants before they produced results, which means provision often comes before performance. Resources often come before proof. God entrusts potential before multiplication. Your income, skills, ideas, network, and opportunities are not accidents. They are assignments. 2, resources are assigned, not owned. Biblical wealth begins when we stop saying, "This is mine," and start saying, "This is entrusted to me." When you understand stewardship, entitlement dies and responsibility rises. 3, God expects engagement, not passivity. The master didn't say, "Protect it." He didn't say, "Preserve it." He didn't say, "Hide it." He expected engagement, which leads us to the second truth. The first 2 servants went immediately and put the talents to work. They traded, they invested, they acted, and they were rewarded. But the third servant, he buried his talent. And this is where many believers misunderstand the story. The servant was not rebuked for losing money. He was rebuked for doing nothing. Let that sink in. Fear is not faith, inaction is not humility. Many Christians call fear wisdom. They call inaction waiting on God. They call stagnation contentment. But Jesus called it wicked and lazy. That's strong language. The servant's problem wasn't lack of ability, it was lack of obedience. Here's the dangerous mindset: I'd rather do nothing than risk doing something wrong. But biblical faith moves. Faith starts businesses. Faith invests. Faith learns. Faith grows. And God rewards faithfulness, not perfection. Here's a truth that may shock some people: God's system is not preservation, it's growth. Not hoarding, but stewardship. Not comfort, but responsibility. Not survival, but multiplication. From Genesis to Revelation, God's pattern is increase, be fruitful, and multiply. Seeds produce harvests, talents produce more talents. Biblical wealth grows when aligned with obedience and purpose. God is not impressed by what you have. He's watching what you do with what you've been given. And notice this: the servants who multiplied were told, "Well done, good and faithful servant." They weren't called greedy. They weren't called worldly. They were called faithful. Which leads us directly to application. If God has given you skills, vision, creativity, opportunities, education, capital, then he expects diligence, integrity, growth, not excuses. Not fear, not delay. Here's the balance every believer must understand: wealth is not the goal. Faithfulness is. But here's the uncomfortable truth: faithfulness often produces increase. And when an increase comes, God watches how you handle it. Wealth is a tool. Money is a test. And entrepreneurship is a stewardship assignment. The question is not, is wealth biblical? The question is, can God trust you with more? God is not offended by growth. He is honored by obedience. He is not threatened by success. He is glorified by stewardship. The parable of the talents teaches us this: God gives according to ability. He expects action, not excuses. He rewards faithful multiplication. So the real question isn't, should Christians build wealth? The real question is, what will you do with what you've been given? If you want more scripture-based financial wisdom, if you want to learn how faith and entrepreneurship work together, if you want to stop feeling guilty about growth and start walking in biblical stewardship, subscribe to the Fransua Entrepreneur, follow this show on your favorite platform, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, because wealth isn't about greed. It's about responsibility and faithfulness. That's always rewarding. I'm Davidson, and I'll see you in the next episode.